Amphibia Season 2 is one of my favorite seasons of television, and I mean no hyperbole, no exaggerations, none whatsoever, because it takes what's great about Season 1 and adds a whole lot of other great stuff into it. Let's just dive in, shall we? We start this season with Handy Ann. The planners are preparing for their trip to Newtopia to help Ann find her way back home and have some adventures along the way, now that the mountain pass is open. Since now the house is gonna be left alone on their way, Ann is worried about the house, and understands doesn't trust Chuck to handle this because so Anne tries to protect the house on her own and fails. The planners understand her and forgive her for it because
Anne, we're not taking this trip for you. We're taking it with you.
We got your back no matter what.
Thanks, fam. That means a lot to me.
it's a relationship that feels well earned because we just spent the last season mainly seeing them grow and connect to each other. Anyway, the next few episodes mainly focus on the trip to Newtopia and the misadventures that goes along with it, such as Sprig and Polly fighting all the time, Hop-Pop unknowingly performing for robbers, etc. And it's interesting to see these characters in a new environment, or should I say, some new environments. They're not the only ones that we get to see in a new environment though. We also see that Wally actually came from a rich family, but he went to Wartwood because he enjoyed life more there. That's interesting. And we also get to see Stan and Suze, now as Frog.
Say, Mr. Pons, do you ever get the feeling that we exist simultaneously in multiple parallel universes, completely unaware of the other's very existence?
Yes, we've got a Gravity Falls crossover. It's honestly very entertaining, and that applies to the rest of the batches of episodes that are about their trip to Newtopia. Not all of them work. I think Rockstop Polly, for example, was just kind of boring and predictable, and it's basically a story concept that I've seen a million times before. Polly is sad because the planners are doubting her, so she leaves them, and then the planners are worried about her, so they eventually come to an understanding and done. Oh, and there's this giant bird, I guess. Not the best the show has to offer, but the majority of it is well done, such as Spoilers Pass, exploring Sprig and Polly's relationship, A Caravan Named Desire covering the topic of how far can you really take your hand, whether or not you should sacrifice it if it hurts others, and Hunter is great for including this dance scene alone, honestly.
Yes, you're doing it. It's so beautiful.
Fort in the Road, showing their first adventure outside of Wartwood and showing how intimidating it can be to take this journey. And also, we see this robot suddenly following them after they blew up this Breath of the Wild-esque factory. But now, after a long journey, Anne and the planners are now in Newtopia, and
Okay, so Utopian rope can hold an average human girl for 2.3 seconds. Maybe I could reinforce the rope with iron spider silk to increase the tensile strength.
Marcy?
And
introducing Marcy, the third girl who went to Amphibia. Turns out, she warped inside the wall of Newtopia, which was very lucky since Newtopia was, and still is, closed because of the barbarians. They have been attacking Newtopia, and so no one is allowed to go in, because that would risk the barbarians to go in. So Marcy, Anne, and the planners try to get rid of the barbarians. However, Anne doesn't trust Marcy because she was, and still kind of is, clumsy. And Sprig doesn't trust Marcy because Sasha. And I'm not exactly a fan of the latter plot point. The former gives us more backstory for Anne and Marcy, and is a really fun arc on its own. Predictability isn't exactly an issue for me because they did something interesting with it, which is the opposite of the latter plot point. Sprig not trusting Marcy is a plot point that makes sense, but is so predictable and, more importantly, uninteresting. I'm not really sure what can be done to make this more interesting since, well, for starters, I'm not a writer, but really though, this is just a plot point that I've seen a million times before, and they didn't really add some flair to it, which is kind of unexpected from the show, since previously they have used some story arcs that have been used multiple times in other works of fiction. In fact, the basic premise of the show is that a girl is transported to another world. Essentially, it's an isekai, for lack of a better term, but they made it interesting with their own jokes and character moments, and showcasing some of the harsher side of being transported to a new world, but we can put a pin on that for now. So yeah, I came out of this episode more mixed than I was expecting to be. For what it's worth, it introduced the character of Marcy very well, and the jokes land as well as they usually do. While I'm on the topic, I might as well talk about Marcy now. Marcy is a geeky, friendly, nerdy, and smart girl. Like, very smart. She's my favorite out of the three girls. I have a hard time describing why I like Marcy because I just kinda do. Mainly, I like how smart she can be at times, but still be naive in other circumstances. And the fact that she's an avid gamer is just great. I certainly wasn't expecting a Famicom reference of all things. It's pretty charming, what can I say? All in all, Marcy is just a fun company to have. So, now we are in Newtopia, and we have some great episodes to discuss here. Scavenger Hunt has Anne dealing with her feelings that she's not as smart as Marcy. And yeah, given the circumstances, it's not hard to see why. However, Marcy points out that Anne is not dumb. She's just good at different things when compared to Marcy. Sure, Marcy is good at biology, math, and all that, but Anne is good at something else, making connections. When trying to solve the puzzles given by King Andreas just in a short time, Anne has already made 3 friends. Now that's impressive. Although speaking of King Andreas, in the planners check-in, you finally get to see him, and he is probably not the most formal king out there.
Pick a hand!
This hand?
Psych!
But let's just put him on the back of our minds for now. Speaking of the episode on its own, however, it's pretty fun. Sprig explores the hotel freely since now he has the gold credit card from the king. It's nothing deep, but it's fun for what it is. Sprig gets cool, explores the topic of college pretty well. Little Frogtown is a pretty good tribute to old detective movies. I mean, seriously. The voice acting, the action scenes, the black and white filter, and even the music style.
I haven't had a bite since 2:45. Now I'm thinking something's gonna take a bite out of me.
You guys should buy Bugcoin.
And then I said that's what bootstraps are for.
Everything is done well here. The sleepover to end all sleepovers is a funny episode with some cool foreshadowing. And real talk here, I feel really bad for Lady Olivia here. She just gets wrecked by the kids. And then we have Hopping Ball. At first, it's a cool episode about Anne trying to win a gift for her mom, but then she finds out that one of the other competitors is trying to win because it was made by her mom, so she gives it to her. But she gets a gift from the daughter of the competitor in return. In the end, we get a scene of Anne and Sprig reminiscing about their parents.
She annoyed me sometimes too. Like, in the kitchen, she'd always sing these goofy Thai love songs, and man was her singing bad. Woof. That woman was beyond tone deaf. You know, the funny thing is, right now, I would give anything just to hear her singing.
It's amazing how sometimes, when you miss a person a whole lot, that one trait that you dislike from that person, now you'd give anything to see it again. But for Sprig, it's something different.
It's cool you know your mom, though. Mine passed away when me and Polly were really young. I don't even remember what she looked like, really, much less the sound of her voice. You know, I've always wondered, can you miss someone you never actually knew? That's silly. I mean, of course you can't.
Yes, Sprig doesn't actually remember his mom at all, as far back as they can remember. Sprig and Polly have been raised by Hop-Hop. This ending, man, it truly is an emotional one. Speaking of missing someone though, let's talk about the day at the aquarium. Andreas and Marcy have finally found a way to get them back home, but of course, they need the box, and since Hop-Hop left it in Wartwood, now the planners are gonna have to go back to Wartwood, and Marcy suggests that Anne should stay in Newtopia to stay safe. Of course, this creates some problem with Anne and the planners, so they decide to spend one last day at the aquarium to have fun and forget their crippling sadness. However, this stuff here reminds them a lot, and I mean a lot, of their past adventures. Really though, this feels like a heartfelt tribute to the adventure so far. It's really charming to see these past adventures, and when the time comes for them to finally part ways, Marcy decides to tell Anne one thing.
You know, the more I think about it, maybe sending a servant to get the music box isn't such a good idea. We need someone looking after that thing the second Hop-Hop gets it back. Someone we trust. I'm sure I can handle the preparations here by myself. I'll just come pick you up on the way to the first temple.
Thanks, Marcy.
Now go, follow your heart.
Okay, later, buddy!
So after hearing that, Anne rushes to catch up with the planners as she comes across the newts she met throughout her adventures in Newtopia on her way out. And
I'm coming with you to Wartwood!
Yeah! Glad to have you back, Anne.
Hop on up here, sister!
Big Frog, I really didn't know how I was gonna make it without you.
after this, the planners return to Wartwood, but before that, we have a special non-canon Halloween episode. This one's pretty simple. It's just a compilation of scary stories involving the characters, and I'm mainly using this episode as a segue to some different topic, although the episode is good in and of itself. Two particular aspects that I want to discuss are the scary parts of Amphibia and the pacing. Let's start with the formula. As I said previously, Amphibia follows the formula of a person transports to a fantastical new world, basically an isekai. However, what I like about the show, and a certain other show that I may or may not have a plan to talk about soon, is that it explores the dark side of being transported to a mysterious world. Granted, the shut-in is non-canon, however, this also applies to a lot of other episodes. Even from the very first episode, it shows how hard it can be to be stranded somewhere in the woods, or be locked up in a prison. It can be traumatizing, especially when you're just a young 13-year-old girl. Secondly, let's talk about the pacing. Each segment of the show lasts 11 minutes, and 2 segments are released as one 22-minute episode. Every once in a while, they release a single 22-minute episode, such as Reunion, Marcy at the Gates, and of course, The Shut-In. 11-minute shows can sometimes be seen as lesser than 22-minute ones. However, it really just depends on the structure of the show. Some shows just fit 22-minute better, and some fit 11-minute better. And they were still able to squeeze in some amazing stories in those 11 minutes multiple times before, as they have shown. But with all that said, let's return to Wartwood now. After a trip that definitely did not go wrong at all, they finally arrived in Wartwood. Now they're ready to relax until further news from Marcy. Well, at least that's what would have happened had they not made a wish list of gifts to bring back to Wartwood that they just forgot about. So how will they try to get around this? Well, of course, they try to summon a godlike creature to eat all of their gifts. Yup, a perfectly normal and logical solution, of course. The Wartwood townsfolk eventually find out about this, and
Why am I not surprised? Typical planters, giant monsters, property damage, putting the entire town in danger. I gotta admit, I missed it.
Me too.
I'd say Return to Wartwood is a great episode to get us back to Wartwood after spending a lot of episodes outside of it. Of course, sooner or later, Hop-Up is gonna have to bring back the box that he buried. And ready or not, Hop-Up is gonna face the consequences of burying the box and lying to Anne. Let's see all of that unfold in one of the best episodes of this show, After the Rain. The planners have finally received news from Marcy, telling them that they found the location of the first temple. When the night comes, Hop-Up tries to get the box back, but it's now gone missing. Anne sees this and is justifiably upset by this, so she runs off to the woods. This is a very impactful moment, as you just see this relationship that has been built up by episodes after episodes now falling apart. In the morning, when Sprig and Polly see this, they encourage Hop-Up to talk it out with Anne, while they try to get the music box back. They finally find the music box, but oh no, it's not exactly easy to get. Anne forcefully works together with Hop-Up, and once it's finally done and over with, Anne still won't forgive Hop-Up for hiding the music box, and then the bombshell drops.
Sprig and Polly's parents.
Yup, remember those herons back in Prison Break? Apparently they attacked Wartwood a few years back, and Sprig and Polly's parents unfortunately didn't survive the attack. So Hop-Up just became paranoid about the safety of his family. Hearing this, Anne starts to understand Hop-Up's action, and so the two of them reconcile. But as we all know, sometimes even if we say we've forgiven people for their action, deep down, we might still have some troubles with each other. And that conflict is going to be explored in the very next episode, The First Temple. So let's just dive in. Marcy arrives at the planner's house with Joe Sparrow, honestly one of the funniest characters in this whole show. I mean, his name is literally based on one of the character designers of this show. But anyway, Marcy tells them that they need to recharge the stones in each of the 3 temples, and after that, they can go to Tower of the Gods. After scaling the Tower of the Gods, Link goes back to the Forsaken Fortress to Sorry, wrong story, I guess. Anyway, they need to recharge the 3 stones to use the Calamity Box to go back home. So, they head off to the first temple. This temple mainly focuses on puzzles and intelligence. Marcy is confident about this because, well, she's smart. But when they go to the temple, one problem with Marcy becomes incredibly apparent. Like I said before, she can be pretty obsessive, and this comes into play. Not only are the planners suffering a bit because of the puzzles, but Anne and Hop-Hop still have some problem. Eventually, they arrive in a game of Flipboard, where the planners all become a piece. Well, Anne ends up being a piece of the opposite team. This is when Anne and Hop-Hop finally talk about their problems.
Oh, I bet you're loving this, ain't ya?
What? No! I might be mad at you, but I don't want to hurt you.
Well, you're already hurting me. Every time you remind me of the mistakes I made. Every time you rub it in my face that I let you down. I mean, what's it gonna take for you to let this go?
Hop-Hop, I...
Just tell me and I'll do it. Anything.
They don't know!
Of course, Marcy can't just stay oblivious to all of this, so she admits defeat, as it's better to lose the game rather than hurt Anne and Hop-Hop. But here's where the temple shows its true intention.
Only the worthy will have the wisdom to choose, whether it's more important to win or have the humility to lose. A choice is made to save thy friends, and honestly, doesn't that make you a winner in the end?
That last bit was oddly casual.
Humility is an important thing to life. After all, there's more to life than just winning all the time. After all of that, the planners decide to take a break before going to the second temple. This leads to some interesting episodes, such as Marcy trying to get the respect of Wartwood. It's nice seeing Anne passing down what she learned about Wartwood to Marcy. Plus, there's also this scene at the end.
You're a walking disaster who doesn't know when to quit. You nearly destroyed this town and killed us all in the process. In other words, you're just like Anne when she got here.
And then there's Frobo. Oh boy. Throughout the show, Frobo has been teased by following the planners all throughout their journey. Frobo is a fun character on its own, an innocent and lovable robot. But one problem I do have though, is the build up to him. He's teased as something that's more important than what he ends up being, and that can cause some disappointment to the audience. But alright, let's head to the second temple now. Remember that one-handed newt from the Bazaar? Well, her name is Valeriana, and she claims that she's able to take them to the second temple. On the right there, she constantly belittles Anne for a selfless act. Anne calls her out for this, and then they both get transported somewhere. Valeriana calls out Anne for her past behaviors, all of which are stuff that happened in previous episodes. And then...
You were right. I did lie and steal. If that makes me unworthy, fine. Those bad choices were mine, and I'll own them. But making them taught me that it's always better to do the right thing. So that's what I did, regardless of how much I didn't want to.
I really like this for not only showing how much Anne has grown, but also because that, yeah, Anne can do some selfish stuff sometimes. However, she's not a selfish person. She can just get a little ahead of herself from time to time. And instead of denying her past mistakes, she owns up to it. After seeing this, Valeriana reveals that it was all a trial to see if Anne was truly worthy or not. The second temple is more of a trial of honesty and selflessness rather than an actual temple. And Anne has proven that she is truly worthy of recharging the stone. While recharging the stone, Anne heard Marcy and the planners screaming. Worried about this, she took off the stone because it was fully charged. Remember this because this is going to be important, trust me. After getting a minor makeover, they're finally ready to go to the third temple, the final temple. The third temple is the test of strength and is also filled with fire. So, might as well call this the fire temple. And speaking of strength, wouldn't it be nice to have Sasha here? Oh, well... How did they get there? Well, for that, let's rewind a bit. We first see Sasha and Graham in Season 2 in Episode 4B, Toadcatcher. Ever since they lost everything after the Toad Tower crumbled, Graham is now on the run, with Sasha, Percy, and Braddock helping him. Graham has kind of broken down and is now watching Suspicion Island all day and doing nothing else. Meanwhile, Sasha has been practicing extensively, just in case that the Newts somehow find out that they have been hiding. And she totally doesn't have any other reason or anything, no. Enter General Yunnan.
My name is General Yunnan, Scourge of the Sand Wars, Defeater of Ragnar the Wretched, and the youngest Newt to ever achieve the rank of General in the Great Newtopian Army.
She's kind of like the Team Rocket of the show, where she has to introduce who she is to everyone she meets. She's now hunting for Grime, and of course he isn't prepared for this at all, as all he was doing before this was just eat, drink, sit, and watch trash TV. So, Sasha has to stick up for him, and of course, the events at the Toad Tower comes back to their minds.
Look, I know why am upset. I'm upset because I lost the duel at Toad Tower, aka the biggest fight of my life.
Oh, please! You're not upset because you lost the fight! You're upset because you lost your friend! You're upset that Anne stood up to you, and that things between you will never be the same again.
Sasha has been doing all of this because of her fallout with Anne. She's still hurt by what happened there, so now she works as hard as she can to protect the one person, or I guess Toad, can still trust. The one who she considers the friend. Of course, it's Captain Grime. So after doing some tricks, they're finally able to get rid of Yunnan. After defeating Yunnan, they now finally have a mission to rule over the Newts and take over Amphibia, which leads to the next episode we see them in Barrel's Warhammer. Sasha, Grime, Percy, and Braddock are presenting their idea to take over Amphibia to the rest of the Toads, and while the plan is acknowledged as good, it's too risky for them to help, so they made a deal. If they can get the Barrel's Warhammer in one day, which no Toad has been able to get by the way, then they'll help. So they all set off to find the hammer, and they immediately find it. No, the hard part isn't just finding the hammer, it's to get it. They eventually manage to grab it with Sasha's eyes flashing, and totally not building up anything here. And now the plan is in motion. Alright, now back to the third temple. Sasha and Graham followed Anne to the third temple, and now they're just trying to help, or are they? Well, Marcy immediately accepts Sasha of course, but Anne, and especially the planners. Nah, Sasha and Anne eventually come to an understanding and try to start over again. However, obviously, this is just a part of the rebellion plan. As we see here, Sasha feels bad about knowing that she's about to betray Anne, but it's just something that she's gonna have to do. Before we go further from here, I want to mention the, I guess, political system of Amphibia. Feels kinda weird saying that, not gonna lie. But anyways, first off, we have the frog, the ones who are considered the low part of society. Then there are the toads, the middle class of the society, who are ordered to rule the frogs but serve the newts. That of course leads to the newts, the high members of society, the ones who rule over Amphibia. The toads are of course trying to lower the newts to have Amphibia for themselves. But for now, let's take a break from that and have a lovely dinner party. Honestly, the dinner is one of the funniest episodes this season. Sasha and Grime visit the planners for a dinner party, and they, unintentionally keep bringing up the events back in Toad Tower. I mean, you feel bad for Sasha, as she's just trying to keep it cool throughout this whole thing, but then the planners constantly remind her of that incident.
Oh, and there she is letting go of Anne's hand and plummeting to her possible death.
It's a tree! You morons! A tree!
But you can't really blame them much because they were literally almost killed. After this, we have Battle of the Bands. The trio are thinking of getting back the band, Sasha and the Sharks. Sasha is thinking of playing her hit song, Heartstomper, but Anne actually wrote the song about her time in Amphibia. Sasha tries to fix some flaws in the song and performance, but Anne makes a point that when you change so much of it, it's not her song anymore. Sasha, realizing how controlling she is, leaves, and is about to perform on her own. She meets Toadie, and after getting it together, she wonders how Toadie has essentially no opinion when Sasha has an opinion about everything and wants to be in control. Twilight arrives, and just before Marcy and Anne perform, Toadie gives Sasha a bit of advice.
I know the feeling, but no matter how badly you want someone to succeed, you can't force it. Because sometimes being a good friend just means being there for them when they need it the most.
So, Anne and Marcy perform, and right as Anne is about to attempt a guitar solo, you know, something Sasha is best at, this brings up the two topics that I haven't discussed much yet, the soundtrack and the character design. The soundtrack is really good. Not only does this show have some iconic character themes, but also a great intro and outro, and the vocal songs that appeared in this episode are also pretty cool. Of course, you get to hear No Big Deal in this episode. However, Heartstomper didn't get to fully play in this episode, but a day before this episode was released, they published a song with what I can only describe as an official AMV. Enough about the songs though, let's get to the visuals now. The character design in Amphibia is really good and creative. I don't really have much to add here, since I'm not a cartoon connoisseur or anything, but one thing I do want to comment on is the animation. The movement of the character is pretty smooth, whether it's jumping around or spin dashing, it's pretty fluid. However, one problem I do have is that sometimes, especially when moving fast, the background scrolling can be kinda stiff. I don't know how to describe it, and I'm not saying that I understand much of the animation process, so I don't want to be too harsh to it, but it is something that I noticed nonetheless. Back to Battle of the Bands though, the Sharks all had fun even if they didn't win. And since they're leaving pretty soon, the Wartwood civilians decide to have a picture with the trio. And it is so cute. And also bittersweet, because you just know that something is gonna go wrong in the very next episode. But of course, that brings us to the season finale. But before that, there's one thing that I'd like to address. In the last video, one of the points that I stated was how Season 1 was, and still is, the one that's usually overlooked when it comes to talking about the show. The lack of a deep plot at that point was a part of this, but another reason, and what I assume was the bigger reason, was how Disney Channel treated the show. Season 1 was aired fully in roughly a month, so there wasn't exactly much time to build up hype for the show. And to rub salt in the wound, they barely advertised the show, and thus leading to many people not knowing about it. Season 2 changed things up a bit. For starters, the first half of the season premiered alongside the second half of the first season of the Owl House, and they are often marketed together. This led to a lot of Owl House fans discovering the show, and they have since become sister shows essentially. And when the second half of Season 2 was finally getting its own schedule, not alongside the Owl House, it wasn't exactly a problem anymore, since the show was already popular enough on its own. However, good scheduling doesn't always apply, as after all the hype leading up to the season finale, less than 24 hours before the premiere, Disney Channel delayed it because of a scheduling shift. But then, oopsie, they forgot to change the release schedule for iTunes, so the episode leaked before it was supposed to premiere. Yeah, that was pretty unfortunate. Alright, now without any further ado, let's just dive into True Colors. We begin with a flashback showing that, before they all got transported to Amphibia, Marcy's family was actually gonna move somewhere else. Of course, she's saddened by this news and runs away. Before this, while she was studying in the library, she found out about the Calamity Box. At first, she thought it was just some fictional stuff, but then she found out that it's real. So, since this is Anne's birthday,
I think I just found the perfect birthday present for Anne.
we'll get back to this flashback in a moment, but for now, let's get back to the present. In Newtopia, Anne and Spray are talking about how this is probably gonna be their last adventure, which is really bittersweet because you just know that something is gonna go wrong here. When they arrive in the castle, however, this is where the Toads are gonna execute their plan. And yes, it's finally time for Sasha to show her true colors. Marcy still tries to make it out with Sasha, but Anne is done with this.
What do I say? After everything you've done? I say you're clearly insane if you think I'm gonna let you bully me and everyone else just to get what you want.
And I know you're upset, but just—
No! I'm done listening to you. I'm done trusting you. You're a horrible person, and I am done being friends with you.
Sasha and Graham decide to put everyone else, including King Andreas, in the dungeon while waiting for the Toad army to arrive. But with the help of Olivia and Yunnan, they all escape, aside from Andreas. So they all structured the plan, and I gotta be honest, this whole scene where they're fighting the Toad and freeing Andreas is hilarious. But time to get serious this time. Sasha and Graham find out about the dark secrets of King Andreas, and after seeing this, they try to stop everyone else from stopping the Toads and helping Andreas. Sasha tries to warn everybody, but none of them, especially Anne, believe in her. And Marcy and everyone else succeed at stopping the Toads, but Sasha knows that something bad is gonna happen. Sasha tries to convince Anne multiple times that there's something wrong with Andreas, but Anne's just tired of Sasha constantly lying and manipulating that she's oblivious to the larger threat. That scene of Anne giving the box to Andreas perfectly encapsulates what's going on. Was Anne giving the box to Andreas despite his face being the epitome of a creepy mugshot. But of course, it's time for Andreas to show his true colors. First off, Andreas gives a small history lesson about Amphibia about 1,000 years ago. Andreas is trying to restore Amphibia to its former glory, back when Newtopia was technologically advanced and he was as strong of a conqueror as ever. And this is where the bombshell drops. Andreas can't send the 3 girls home yet because they do not want them to warn the humans about the upcoming invasion. Yes, Andreas is now not only trying to conquer Amphibia, but the other worlds as well. Andreas being a villain is something that I already expected. It's already been foreshadowed multiple times before. It's not like they're trying to hide it. That said, I really like him as a villain. He can be threatening, menacing, but also charming at the same time. But we'll dive deeper into his character as we go along in Season 3. For now, let's get back to True Colors. After this, Marcy stops all of them from fighting and questions Andreas on why he's doing this, and that this is not the plan. Apparently, before this, Marcy had a deal with Andreas. If she gave him the box, then they would get more adventure opportunity. Marcy still wants to be with her friend and isn't ready to go back to her world, to go back back to reality to be separated from her friends. And now, it's time for Marcy to reveal the truth to everyone else. The truth that she got the trio into Amphibia intentionally.
I did it for us. The day we left, your birthday, they told me my dad got a new job out of state. They're making me move away. They were gonna tear us apart. And it sent us to a place where we'd never have to grow apart, where the three of us could be friends forever together.
How could you? I've been missing my parents, my life.
I just didn't want to be alone.
Now, I do feel like this moment would have been even more impactful had they put the flashback here instead of the beginning of the episode. However, it's still a very emotional scene. After all of this, you really have to wonder if they're still friends that they were back then. Sasha and Anne have broken up ever since the Toad Tower incident, and they haven't really been able to get that friendship back to how it was, with the Toad Rebellion only exacerbating the situation. Anne and Sasha both find out that all of this, being in prison, starving, being lost in the woods, sometimes getting slightly traumatized even, all of this was the result of Marcy's actions. This friendship that once was is now broken. But for now, they're gonna have to focus on one thing. They need to focus on stopping Andreas. And during their attempt, several events happen. Polly grows her leg, Probo gets broken off by Andreas, and then there's this scene.
You've all got spunk, real chutzpah, but this ends now.
Guys, don't listen to this bully. I'll be fine.
Andreas threatens to kill Sprig right after Polly gets the box back. Unfortunately, out of options, Anne falls for the basic villain trick, and of course, Andreas is still gonna let Sprig fall off. Anne is angered by all of this, and remember the fact that Anne's stone wasn't fully charged, also the fact that the girl's eyes was flashing sometimes.
No, it can't be.
Anne has transformed into a super form per se. She can't control it yet, so let's just keep it in mind for now. While all of this is happening, Marcy saves Sprig and now is trying to turn the box back on again. She tells Anne and the planners to get into the portal, while Sasha and Rhyme take care of Andreas. Just before Marcy can get into the portal,
Marcy, hurry! I just need to...
Now look what you've made me do.
I'm sorry for everything.
Marcy!
yeah, this aired on Disney Channel by the way. Honestly, I'm just impressed by how much his show can get away with nowadays. Marcy just got impaled, and then...
What the...
Oh my frog.
What is this place?
Home.
yeah, most of the first half of Season 3 is essentially gonna be reverse isekai. But I digress. What do I think of True Colors and Season 2 overall? Honestly, I was pretty nervous going back to this episode. What if I didn't like this episode as much as I did? I had a similar situation with Youngblood Old Souls, the Season 1 finale of the Owl House, but I can save that for another time. The point is, I don't want to be disappointed with the episode, and thankfully, it was as great as I remembered. Heck, it's probably even better. The animation, voice acting, writing, everything. It was all amazing. Granted, the flashback could have been handled better, but other than that, I don't really have any issue with this episode. And in terms of the season as a whole, well, I've got nothing more to add. I've basically covered everything I want to say about this episode, and in regards to the next video, well, it's gonna be interesting to say the least, as most of it is gonna be based on a first time viewing instead of a rewatch like these first two videos are. But I've got nothing more to add here, so as always, thanks for watching.